Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Imperfect Marketing. I'm your host, Kendra Corman, and I am really excited to have my friend Stormy join me today. On this episode, Stormy is a podcast host of a show called The Art of Volunteering. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, Stormy.
Kendra, thank you for having me. I'm quite excited about this too.
So, why don't you share with everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got into podcasting?
Let's see. My name's Stormy Bell. And by day, I am a director of development at a nonprofit in Chester County, Pennsylvania. My hobby is actually the podcast. And I got into it because I reached a point in life. I'm like, well, what have I done? And what do I want to do? I had explored doing a digital course, but they talked about having your email list, which I know Kendra's very big on email lists. I'm like, well, I'm starting at zero. What do I do? So I kind of took my passion for volunteering, people getting involved. And I'm like, well, I've done that throughout my life. I could talk about that, and turned it into a podcast. It started out with just conversations with friends of mine who were in nonprofit space with their volunteers. And we've been able to grow it to where I've had guests from Zimbabwe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. So we really get around. And this next year, I'll be having someone from, I think she's Colombia. So we're getting to all the continents.
Very cool. I love the decisions that you've made around the podcast. First off, it's a great podcast. So if you are tuning in and want to learn about more about volunteering and the types of nonprofits out there, I encourage anybody who's listening or watching to tune in to The Art of Volunteering. We'll have some links for you in the show notes. But let's talk a little bit about podcasting itself. So
Okay.
it's not your full-time job, right?
No, it's not.
So how do
So
you
how do I
do
do
this?
it? I like to batch my interviews. Well, let me back up. I like to talk to people who are making a difference, who are out there in the community, ranging from my last episode, which was PA Votes, where it talked about a nonprofit that gets out into like that 18 to 24 age space and just teaching the importance of civics, which isn't necessarily taught in all schools the way it used to, about the importance of issues. I've had a member of SCORE, who's the mentoring for like Small Business Association. I had a representative from there to come on and just talk about different people at different phases of life giving back. The theme about all the episodes is someone giving back or giving to the community or paying it forward in just making a difference. I like to batch my interviews. I try to do Saturday morning since this is my day job. And I will do anywhere from 2 to 4 interviews on a Saturday. And then my son is my editor. So I do not do the editing. And he's wonderful. He's actually in that field. So I get the professional. I pay him. It's not for free. And so we make a really good team. We do the episodes are bi-weekly. So it's basically 2 episodes a month. Our main social platform is YouTube. I do you can find an audio on Apple, Google, Spotify, but those are the main 2 platforms. I don't really focus on being in all the social media platforms. I just don't have time for that. So it's YouTube and a little LinkedIn. So I try not to go crazy with that. Less is more in many ways. I have I'm planning my 4th season at this point, which is very exciting to think I've been doing this for 4 years. And it's fun. Many people have maybe have heard the book, The 5 Love Languages. Well, mine's like quality time and quality conversation. So I can come out of a Saturday morning, which originally started during the pandemic, and I would be so refreshed. I've just been to blah, 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 talking about all these really cool people helping other people or animals or arts. We've had a variety of all of them, but it's just giving of themselves. My vision for the podcast is to help restore the fabric of our society. And we can only do that by coming together and working with each other. So the the pleasure is highlighting nonprofits, people who are in the trenches many times, working on many social issues from housing insecurity, food insecurity, educational oasis. Like there's just so many ways that people can get involved. It could be as simple as someone who's retired going to their elementary school and reading a book to children once a week for an hour. It doesn't have to be hard. Or it can be someone who's being a board member for a nonprofit where they're using their skills and expertise. Maybe their day job is finances. Well, nonprofits need to have that guidance in their boards. So there's something for everyone, and that's what I enjoy highlighting with the podcast.
I love the time that you take to plan and identify your guests. You look for opportunities with themed months and things like that that are going on. Again, PA votes came out right around the election, which was very timely and relevant. So I think it'll have some long-lasting impact, hopefully, on everybody who listens and watches. Now, being a podcast host, you've actually like had people stop you at networking events and things
Yes.
like that when you're doing your full-time job. Talk to me about what identifying that you're a podcast host or talking to people about being guests at networking events has done for you in the rest of your life.
It's really been exciting. People get, when you say you're a podcast host, they're like, really? Like, that's so cool. And it's so simple, but it's been really neat. And when I'm at networking events, I do my day job, talking about who I am and what we do and our mission. And then always you reach the point of the conversation where you're like, oh, so what are you into? Just getting to know the person. And so I'll bring up my podcast because it is a little different and it allows you to elevate nonprofits while you're talking about it. So it's a lot of fun, and it's always cool because some of my reach does come through LinkedIn. So I'm into the network of the region that I work, and it's like, wow, you listen or you pay attention. Like it's always exciting that someone's listening to it. Now, I know from the numbers that people are listening, but it's when you actually have a real person saying that they're listening, it's like, wow, that's so cool. So I think I'm just as excited about the conversation as they are to mention it.
And I think that that's just so neat because it's something that sets you apart from everybody else. People are going to remember you after a networking event because of that. So let me ask you about your schedule. So I talk to a lot of people, they always say, and I can't remember who it is that said it, but don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle. And I'm guilty of that. I do that all the time. I'm like, I want to be there now. But it's not always possible. And so a lot of the people that are like me that compare their beginning to someone else's middle, want to do more frequent episodes and stuff like that. What have you noticed and why did you choose to do every other week?
First, I thought it was manageable, knowing that this is my side hustle. That it's, if you do 4 episodes on a Saturday morning, that's 2 months worth. So you're able to keep pace with it. My son also has a full-time job, and he's doing this on the side for me. So it allows him to be able to pace that out. At times, I'd like to do more like 4 weeks because there's just so many great stories. And like I'm already mapping out season 4, and I'm like, okay, that's only 26 stories that I get to share. But from a realistic point of view, I can manage 2 episodes a month. What was the other part of your question?
The cadence and social media. How are you managing? How did you decide YouTube and LinkedIn as your 2 main platforms?
When we started, the first year we recorded, I use Zoom. I know some people don't like Zoom, but my son is able to figure out how to do the dual tracks. So he's able to have the voices on different tracks for editing. But it's something that I was familiar with and was able to do. So that's how we chose that. And then using that platform, year 1, we only put it out on audio. So you could only find us on Apple, Spotify, or Google, wherever that you listen. And then after we had a season of video, we launched into YouTube because we're in an age where video is king. And so we launched in April because that's National Volunteering Month. So that's kind of like my anniversary month every year. And so we launched year 2, all of season 1 in video. And then we started putting it out every 2 weeks. And then LinkedIn is because my network is my network. And I have people all over the East Coast, around the world, who follow it. So it just gives it a larger branch. So I hang out on LinkedIn. So it's very natural for me to post there. And then YouTube, that's just where people go for their video content.
So I think that there's a lot to learn here from what you're talking about. So you picked a manageable schedule that continues to be manageable. You picked a manageable number of social media channels and you started with 1 and expanded to 2 over time. Like that takes a lot of discipline because there's so many shiny objects out there that I think that I give you kudos because I fall into the shiny objects thing all the time, unfortunately to my detriment. So I understand how hard it is to do what you're doing and to keep it in control because sometimes you have more time. Sometimes you hear more stories and you want to share them, but you are very disciplined and controlled with how you've grown your show. And your show has grown
Yes.
pretty significantly. I think Buzzsprout said if you have more than 40 downloads on average of an episode, that you're in the top 50% of podcasts.
Yes.
Between your audio and video, you're well above that on average,
On
right?
average, from the 3 seasons thus far, I'm about 80 downloads per episode. Now, some of those are less, some are more, but on average, 80. So I'm quite pleased about that. It's exciting to think that people are listening to these conversations and hopefully finding value with them because they're supposed to be a source of encouragement and education. Just these great conversations. Like I've spoken with corporations like SAP to talk about their corporate social responsibility program and how they're getting their employees to give back. They have a great program called Social Sabbatical, where their employees can actually do local for like a week, or they can go international for longer periods of time. And they're just giving back their skills. And we learned that it helps build morale within the organization. There's cross pollination of people working in different departments and getting to know each other. So there's a lot of value in volunteering that people just don't realize. It does give you the basis for purpose, connections, community. It's really good for your mental well being. We've actually had a counselor come on and talk about the impact of volunteering of any age. We've spoken with educational institutions, a college who talked about like why is it important for those incoming applications to have like that community service, that volunteering, and it has a lot to do with how they're going to assimilate to the college campus. Because when you volunteer, you're putting yourself in situations you wouldn't normally find yourself in with people who are different than you many times. So that allows you to expand that when you arrive on the college campus. So there's just a lot of really cool things about volunteering that we get to bring out and share. And I think people are resonating with it, especially in the culture of society that we're living in right now, where it can be so divisive and so polarizing. Volunteering helps bring people together, and it's for our greater good.
Well, I love learning about all the different organizations that you highlight. So I think that there's a lot of value that you're bringing, and it's not just local. I mean, it's national, international. It's the causes that you're highlighting. Some of them might be hyper local, but for the most part, the cause is national, international. It's a lot larger than just your local area, and the stories that you're getting are larger than the local area, which is very cool.
Just
So
on that, hang on just real quick on
yeah.
that. Some of the times, like some of the local ones, it's the idea that I'm going to be having a food bank in the next year, and they might be in a particular region. But if you really resonate with that story, you can find that where you live. So it's not just like, oh, I'm only covering one section of the country for the most part. No, these issues are everywhere, and there's a solution that you can get involved with.
And I think a couple of other things that I really like about your podcast, it's about volunteering. There's no question about what you're going to hear about. It's going to be about opportunities, about a nonprofit that's leveraging volunteers in a very cool and unique way that has a very neat and unique story. So I think all of that is just keeps people coming back week after week. And, again, this isn't your full-time job. This is a passion project of yours, and you've grown it, with a consistent every other week episode, and staying consistent to who you are and what the topic is. They know what to expect from you and your guests, which is always a good story. So let me ask you about your tech stack. So when it comes to the art of volunteering, what you said you're using Zoom. What else do you have?
A microphone, I have earphones, and I don't use the camera in the computer. I actually use a Canon EOS Rebel. That's what my son used before he moved from the area. So he took my equipment with him. It's his equipment. So I actually had to invest in my own. And I like the quality of it. It's simple to use. And I'm fortunate to have an office. So I leave it set up and I just hook into it each time. So my equipment's kind of on the low end. Like I said, he's the one who does the editing. So he has those platforms. I'm not sure exactly what those are, but he's able to do it. He's experienced, so it's fairly quickly for him to go through it. I can imagine if I was to do it, it would take a whole lot longer. But so you got to know, I would say, what your capabilities are, and that you can find resources to fill those gaps. And it could be as simple as contacting your high school for someone in the audiovisual department or afternoon program to see if they are able to help you, because it's real training for them to be able to do it. Or there's paid professionals as well. So, but it doesn't have to be expensive and it doesn't have to be hard.
So we talked a little bit about originally you were doing it to build a bit of an audience. You've been doing it for 3 years. You've built a significant audience beyond just the people that listen every week, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You're sending out regular emails every time an episode comes out. How else are you promoting it?
It's the biweekly emails. That's really my main source of promoting it, other than posting it on LinkedIn and YouTube. We do just the YouTube video every other week, and then the opposite week we do the shorts, where it's 60 seconds or less, and we actually have built into the script for the day. I ask questions and I'll actually say, can you say this in 60 seconds or less? So it's really defined in what we're talking about. Many times it's why I volunteer, like just someone saying that quickly, not quickly, but just 60 seconds. Or we'll pull from a blooper. You have your question about imperfect marketing. Mine is, what's a blooper? Because many times our listeners learn more from the things that didn't go right as opposed to things that went perfectly. And so we will pull from there for our shorts.
All right. So that's another thing that I really want to make sure people heard and are listening to. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, or if you're going to be doing podcast guesting, help those people out that are creating the podcasts and help them create those snippets, those shorts, those reels, and the TikToks and everything else that go with it, depending on where people are promoting. I like how you go in knowing that you want certain things in a shorter, condensed period of time. You're planning ahead for what those shorts could be. I mean, yes, you'll add in extra ones if there's like a really good tidbit, right? But
Right.
it really comes down to making sure that you have what you need and that it's flowing the way it needs to, which I think is so important in the planning. On average,
Something.
how long does it take you to plan an episode?
Oh, okay. That was about where I was going to go. It takes, at this point, I kind of have a script of the different things that we're going to move through in the conversation. And then prior to that, I send out actually a Google link for my guests to complete it. I send about a week ahead of time. And then I sit down usually the day before, sometimes the day of, because I like it to be fresh in my mind. And I look at the questions they ask. I ask them in the form to spell out like 3 talking points, because the guest is the expert of their field, the volunteering that's happening. So I let them kind of tell me what they want to talk about. And then I build my questions around that. And then obviously during the conversation, there'll be clarifying questions, or I'll have a thought that comes up. But I kind of map it out so I know exactly where it's going to go. That helps me not to have to read, other than like their bio, which I want to make sure I have exactly what they've given. I just follow kind of the script. I always think of like Sajak, and now Ryan Seacrest with the Wheel of Fortune. It is the same script every night, but it's the guests that make it different. And so I can follow the same script week after week, but it's the guests and how they answer the questions and what they're passionate about. That's what makes the difference in every single podcast.
I really like that, because it doesn't, when I listen to your episodes, they don't sound repetitive to me. So even though you've got a script, nothing feels overly rehearsed or as if it is a script, right? It's just a conversation between you and somebody else. And I think that comes through. So, okay. So you've got a little bit of a script. You refresh yourself with a little bit about what they're going to talk about. You try to plan your recordings on days off, which is always good. And how have you seen the results of people recording on Saturdays? Any pushback on that recording schedule piece?
It's been interesting. The first 2 years, I had no issues. I was scheduled every other month. I'd have a Saturday that I would just set aside in my personal schedule. And okay, that's Art of Volunteering Day. This particular year, people have been pushing back. So I'm actually been doing them after work, like that 4:30 to 5:30 time. So I'm only getting one done a day, which is a little frustrating because I'm not batching them, having 4 on a Saturday being 2 months. I'm only out a month or a month and a half. So that's been just interesting. Just people's schedules have changed. It's fine. I still like the batching on a Saturday. So I know, as we're recording this, we're heading into the holiday season. So I have some time off from work. The day after Thanksgiving, we're not open. So I'm looking to connect with people who also are working, and maybe this is their side hustle with their volunteering, to schedule it for that day. So it's a daytime schedule, but it's not interfering with work.
Okay. Very cool. But again, I think that there's a lot to say for the fact that people would adjusting to your schedule. So you can batch, you can pick a day,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think we get a little bit into our own heads and into our own ways about how hard podcasting will be if that's something that we want to do. And if you can get around those mental blocks that I think each of us have different ones, you can streamline it, you can make it your own. And it doesn't have to be Monday through Friday. It doesn't have to be whenever they feel like. You can batch, you can pick a day. There's just so many things that you can do. You can pick your own cadence and schedule and time limits and everything else that goes with it. And it doesn't have to be harder than you think it is. And you have an opportunity to share your passion and what you're passionate about with the world in a way that's educational and will help people. And I think that that's really powerful. So I love the fact that you have this podcast and that you've been doing that with it. So before we wrap up, because I think that there's a lot here, and hopefully people are learning from a different perspective when it comes to podcasting. When we're looking at the marketing that you do, either in your real job or on your side hustle, the show is called Imperfect Marketing. So marketing is anything but a perfect science. What has been your biggest marketing lesson learned?
It's trial and error, and that not every platform is going to be where you want to be. I've tried on Facebook, and Facebook for me is more family. base, and I don't see a lot of traction in there. Not that my family doesn't listen, but that's not where they're clicking. They've actually become more of a either a YouTube or an Apple listener. I don't see the click through on Facebook, so I don't stress about, maybe once in a while if it's a really like one of my favorite episodes, I'll put it out there, but that's not where I have it. So really understanding what my who's listening to it, like volunteering, and I'm in the nonprofit space. LinkedIn does work well for me because I have other nonprofits listening to it and gleaning from the information that's being spoken about. So I would say you really need to know what your product is and find the social media platform that truly speaks to that you know your people are going to be hanging out there. So my lesson learned would be, just don't go crazy on all the social platforms. Just pick the one, maybe two, that truly um, fit who you're trying to reach and where you enjoy hanging out on. Because if you enjoy hanging out there, people are going to find you.
Exactly. I love that because that's also really big into productivity and ways to save time. Because when you're everywhere and you don't enjoy it, you're not really embracing the platform. You're not really doing what you need to do. And everybody needs more time because none of us are getting it all done. So I
That's right.
think that that's huge, and I love that that is something that you shared with us today. So, Stormy is the podcast host of the show, The Art of Volunteering, which you can find on YouTube and anywhere you can download your podcast. So, Spotify, Apple, and I think a bunch of others too. So,
Yes.
it is syndicated throughout. So we're, again, wherever you're listening or watching to podcasts, be sure to check out Stormy's Art of Volunteering, and don't be afraid to think about how you want to put your podcast together. Create it for how you want to live and work and what is manageable for you. I think that that is a huge lesson learned. I think Stormy's numbers prove that being consistent and doing what you can do is more than enough, because it puts you in a top tier of consistent podcasters. So thank you again so much for joining me today, Stormy. I really appreciate it. If anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to talk to you more about podcasting and how we both started our stories. And that's it for now. Have a great rest of your day.